Meeting will come to order. Is this on? Yes. Will town meeting members please take their seats? This meeting will come to order.
I haven't talked to him, actually. Good. Is that okay with your board? Good.
Before we begin these proceedings, one town meeting member has passed away since our last town meeting, and I would ask all of the town meeting members to stand so we may bow our heads in a moment of silence for James F. Deneen, a town meeting member from 1972 to 1999. Jim died on January 9th. Thank you. You may be seated.
Hey, Charlie, what's the podium doing over here? Huh?
Now, there's no one here who doesn't know what the special town meeting is about, and it's about the school building committee's recommendations. It's an important town meeting. And here's what I expect to happen and how I want to try to make this as orderly as possible. There are many issues, there are many questions, and I believe all town meeting members as well as the voters who are listening at home deserve to have a full explanation of this extraordinary request, extraordinary in size, and impact on the town, yet also extraordinary maybe in terms of its impact on the tax rate. Now, okay, well, the only microphone I have. All right, can you hear me now? Okay. Maybe if I speak more slowly. All right, at any rate, what I expect to happen is that we will have formal presentations tonight from the school committee, the superintendent of schools, and the superintendent of schools, from the school building committee, and from the warrant committee. The warrant committee presentation will focus particularly on the finances. At the League of Women Voters Forum, the majority of questions, I'm told, related to finances. Nonetheless, a full explanation of the need and the process, I believe, is important. Now, many of you have done your homework, and you went to the League Forum or you went to other forums, and you have heard most of this, so you will say to yourself, well, if everybody did their homework, we wouldn't have to have all these presentations now, would we? But the fact of the matter is, as you well know, the process doesn't quite work that way. Some people have done their homework. Some people, for good reason, couldn't do their homework. And the fact of the matter is, this issue is such that it deserves a reasonable and thorough explanation and presentation. So it is my expectation that this will take up most of this evening. And then we will get to debate and further questions. If there's time tonight, we will start taking questions. In order to preserve order, I want to remind you of the rule that questions are addressed to me as your town moderator, and I will designate and find out the person or persons to answer the questions. So you may not stand up and say, I've got a question for Ed Spellman, or I've got a question for the superintendent. You can have a question, okay? Now, that's how I think it's going to go. Articles 10 and 11 have been withdrawn. And if anybody needs an explanation, I can give it to them, but that's probably good news. We will do Articles 1 through 3, which appear, if you've read them, to be relatively routine. And so that everyone understands the traditions, I am going to go over the basic ground rules, which mostly will come into play tomorrow. You all are aware that you're required to check in and be seated in the lower part of the auditorium. If you wish to speak on any article or pending related matter, you must go to the nearest microphone, and upon being recognized by the moderator, you must identify yourself by giving your name and precinct. If you have not been recognized by the moderator, you are not permitted to speak. On occasion, members will informally alert the moderator that they desire to be recognized to speak on a certain article. While your moderator will attempt to remember who desires to be recognized in any article, please understand that the only way in which a member can be sure to be recognized is to go to a microphone and wait to be recognized. I sometimes, as I get older, lose track of these things, and I don't want anybody to say, well, you forgot me. Your moderator will from time to time simply forget, in other words. Third, by long-standing tradition, while any other voter of the town who is not a town meeting member may not vote, he or she may be recognized to address town meeting, providing that the voter in advance has obtained my permission. And there are at least 5 non-town meeting members who have already obtained my permission. I am totally liberal on this. The rule is necessary in order to keep order. In other words, if 100 people want to speak, I don't want them just raising their hands. I have to know about it in advance of the meeting. All right, so if somebody wants to speak tomorrow, you can call me tomorrow or see me before the meeting. Any person who is employed as an attorney by another person interested in any matter under discussion shall disclose the fact of his or her employment before speaking. Now, with reference to each article in the warrant, the recommendation of the warrant committee shall ordinarily be considered to have been presented in the form of a motion by the chairperson of the warrant committee, which has been seconded by the secretary or other member of the warrant committee who is a town meeting member. Unless the moderator otherwise expressly states at the time, the question to be voted on under each article will usually be whether or not to accept the recommendation of the warrant committee. In the event that the warrant committee recommendation is a no on an article, the question will be presented as a vote on a motion made and seconded to approve the article. That is, members will vote yes if they favor the article and no if they oppose the article as recommended by the warrant committee. When it is announced by the moderator that the meeting will proceed to a vote, debate will be closed and the pending question will be put to the town meeting. No vote may be reconsidered at the same meeting except upon a motion made within 1 hour of the adoption of such vote, unless by 2/3 vote, provided that the time which elapses during any adjournment of the meeting shall be excluded in computing the hour since the adoption of the vote. Upon a question being put to the town meeting, the moderator will first determine by voice vote the sense of the meeting. If I'm unable to decide, and it's doubted by 7 town meeting members standing there in their place, you have a standing vote. If it's further doubted by 25 standing in their place, then there's a roll call vote. Now, with respect to the substantive articles 4 and 5, because they call for issuing bonds, they require a 2/3 vote. And I'll tell you right now, we're going to have a standing vote on that. Okay? The matter is too important for even me to be saying what the vote is. Okay? And I need a special authorization to declare it anyway because it's a 2/3 vote, and I'm not seeking that. Finally, if there are any motions that are at all complex in accordance with the traditions of the town meeting, they have to be submitted in advance in writing before presentation to the membership. That's right in section 2, I believe, of chapter 2 of the bylaws. Now, simple motions, I don't require that, just to expedite things. All right, now with these rules in mind, we will get to the business of the meeting, which are the first 3 articles, which I frankly consider to be relatively routine. And they are. Article 1 is to see if the town will vote to rescind the borrowing authorization voted by the May 1998 annual town meeting under Article 37 regarding Kidder Branch Library addition and to act on anything relating thereto. The recommendation of the warrant committee is that the town vote yes to rescind the borrowing authorization of $211,798 voted by the May 1998 annual town meeting under Article 37 regarding Kidder Branch Library. Does anybody wish to address this article? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation of the Warrant Committee say aye. Those opposed, the recommendation of the Warrant Committee is passed. Article 2, to see what sum of money the town will vote to appropriate for the stabilization fund in accordance with the provisions of general laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B, and to act on anything relating thereto. The recommendation of the Warrant Committee is that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $200,000 to the stabilization fund, and that to meet said appropriation, the sum of $200,000 be transferred from fiscal year 1999 supplemental lottery receipts. Does anyone wish to address the recommendation of the Warrant Committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation of the Warrant Committee say aye. Those opposed, the recommendation of the Warrant Committee is adopted. Article 3, to see what sum of money the town will vote to appropriate to repay all or a portion of the debt of $455,126 incurred by deferring teacher summer pay for fiscal year 1992 pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 336 of the Acts and Resolves of 1991, and to act on anything relating thereto. The recommendation of the Warrant Committee is that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $44,513 to repay a portion of the debt incurred by deferring teacher summer pay for fiscal year 1992 pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 336 of the Acts and Resolves of 1991, and that to meet said appropriation, the sum of $44,513 be transferred from fiscal year 1999 supplemental lottery receipts. Does anyone wish to address the recommendation of the Warrant Committee? All those in favor of the recommendation of the Warrant Committee say aye. Those opposed, the recommendation of the Warrant Committee is adopted. All right, now we're coming to Articles 4 and 5, which are the substantive articles. And there's first a short announcement on behalf of the Governor Stoughton Trust from one of the trustees who also chairs Board of Selectmen, Mr. Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Reporting to you tonight, new information that has come to our attention since the printing of the warrant. We have received through Town Council John Flynn information from the Attorney General's office that the Attorney General's office agrees with the position of the town of Milton that it may transfer care, custody, and control of the property, the subject which is the 24 acres. In addition, the Attorney General's office accepts the appraisal by Jerry Murray Regan, SRA, submitted to the Milton School Building Committee. The Attorney General's office agreed that the sum of $615,000, representing the fair market value for single-family use, was the amount that the Attorney General's office would support. They did not agree with the proposal by the Board of Selectmen acting as trustees that it be discounted for the number of low-income students. They did agree with the single home value of $615,000 as the fair market value for the property. The final point to remind you is that the Attorney General's office will accompany us to the probate court, so they are not the final point. But the point is that they will, in fact, support this position in our presentation before the probate court. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. All right, now, in case you missed it, we're going to hear a short, relatively short presentation from the school committee and the superintendent of schools. Then you're going to hear from the school building committee, at least 3 speakers, and then you're going to hear from the chairman of the warrant committee speaking on behalf of the warrant committee. So the chair of the school committee, Susan Kiernan, is recognized.
Good evening. Yeah, I think it's on. Thank you for coming tonight to listen and to vote on the school building project. There are many in this room who have the factual presentation, have heard the factual presentation before, but please bear with us because there are many also here who have not. We're here tonight to send the school building project to the Milton residents to vote, and also to put the imprimatur of the town meeting members on the improvement of the school buildings as voted by the school building committee and approved by the school committee and supported by the warrant committee and the majority of the selectmen. Now, some may ask, how did we get here? In 1972, a school building needs committee recommended building a new high school and a renovation of the other schools based on technological developments and societal changes. The committee recognized the responsibility of parents and local taxpayers to prepare students for a new world that is more complex and rapidly changing, in their words. In response to that recommendation, changes were never made. In 1995, the school committee conducted an architectural study which found that there was at least $10 million worth of repairs required to bring the school buildings to a safe and healthy condition. This study did not address the issue of overcrowding or new buildings. In 1997, the school committee voted to approve a second architectural study to delve farther into the issue, to study questions concerning renovation and new construction for all of the 6 school buildings. The school committee committed $20,000 from the school budget to commission the architectural study. The study was comprised of a limited assessment of school buildings done by Tappé Associates, which demonstrated that we had significant problems with all of our school buildings. They also performed a demographic study which concluded that our current population growth, which registered 47% over the past 15 years, would continue until the year 2006. At the 1998 town meeting, the town moderator established the school building committee, comprised of members with different backgrounds and areas of expertise. With $350,000 from the school department capital budget and under the direction of the school building committee, Drummy Roseanne Anderson, commonly known as DRA, performed architectural and engineering studies and determined the work necessary to solve our overcrowded classrooms and our crumbling buildings. With a supplemental appropriation of $40,000 at the 1999 town meeting, the building committee continued its assignment. We learned that we were eligible for a 61% state reimbursement for our school construction and that our overcrowded conditions would move us to the top of the list of towns waiting for construction funding reimbursement. We learned that the town's share of the $115 million project would be $45 million. This expenditure would enable us to have new buildings, equipment, and furniture. The funding would come from bonding over a 25-year period and a school building assistance grant from the state at the rate of 61% of our total cost. We learned that to continue to limp along patching our buildings would cost our town approximately $35 to $40 million with no state contribution, no new furniture, no new equipment, including computers, and no new future. The building committee met approximately 55 times over the past year and a half, examining, studying, adjusting the architectural proposals, listening to the input of the abutters, and the input from educational, architectural, and engineering experts as well. In fact, over the weekend, we all received a letter from the park department citing field concerns about the project. This letter may have been a bit misleading. What you should know is that the building committee, aside from meeting publicly 55 times, has met twice with the park department to hear their particular concerns, each time making adjustments to satisfy their needs. Concerning the issue of fields, the following proposals are presently being considered. The upper JV field behind the present Pierce School would be replaced by a new high school building. A new JV field would be located on the middle tier where the tennis and basketball courts presently are. The tennis courts would go to the smaller field on the Article 38 parcel, which would also accommodate a new full-size soccer field. We're confident that we will have 2 full-size soccer fields at the Glover and Town Farm schools, dependent on the Conservation Commission approval. In the event that we have a new field house, we would have 4 new full-sized indoor basketball courts with an outdoor court at the new middle school. In the event that we do not have a new field house, we would have another outdoor basketball court where the field house would be located. Under both scenarios, whether with the field house or without, we have not lost field space. In fact, we have a net gain of 34,800 square feet. In the event that we build a field house with 4 indoor basketball courts, we may lose 1 outdoor court, but we still have a net increase of 3 basketball courts. Our high school athletic director and principal are more than satisfied with the present building plan and enthusiastically support it in its entirety, and I would refer you to the letter that was distributed at the door, wherein both the principal, Dr. Joseph Arangio, and the athletic director, Thomas Herget, conclude a long and very articulate letter by saying we enthusiastically endorse without reservation the plan for a new high school, and we believe this plan addresses the curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular needs of Milton High School. Now, in July of 1999, the school committee met with the state at a required building needs conference, whereupon it was suggested by the state that we apply for our entire project rather than divide it into pieces. The building project has an inherent phasing in over 7 years, both in terms of construction and bonding. To wait would subject the town to greater costs at a later date, including a possible decrease in the reimbursement formula. We are not alone in facing increasing enrollment and deteriorating school buildings. In a January 2nd article in the Boston Globe, it was front page news in the South Weekly section that there is a rush statewide to build new school buildings. Thus, there is serious concern on Beacon Hill regarding the huge cost to the state to fund school proposals. This program reimburses cities and towns between 50% and 90% of their school building costs. However, only if we make the June 2000 list is the state committed to reimbursing Milton 61% of our school building costs. The Globe article concluded that today almost every school district in the region has a major building project either on the drawing board or under construction. There is a legitimate concern that the large number of applicants and the reevaluation of the formula may leave Milton in a costlier position if the project is delayed. In addition, according to the town accountant, if we delay addressing the elementary building needs for 7 years and only move on to the middle and high school buildings, the additional cost to the town will be a minimum of $8.5 million. A breakup of the project would also neglect to address the serious overcrowding issue at the elementary schools. The school committee approved the educational specifications and the preliminary plans, which were presented by the building committee. These illustrate the amount of educational space needed in a particular building on a particular site. We are presently eligible to get on the state's reimbursement list, provided we have a vote of the town to do so. As noted in the report of the Department of Revenue, Milton is a relatively affluent community whose public schools have not received significant increase in state aid. In fact, the funding formula of educational reform has hurt Milton. Many wealthier communities receive higher state aid than Milton. In the past 20 years, Milton's Chapter 70 state aid has increased by less than $1 million, while the state has added approximately $200 million in new state aid in each of the past 6 years. We continue to have per pupil expenditures that are below the state average. We continue to lobby for greater state aid for Milton through citizen groups as well as our local and state representatives. Now, some may ask, why do we need such extensive work all at once? Well, over the years, the school committee has asked the town for allocations for capital improvements for their buildings. Each time, the amount of money needed is either reduced by Capital Improvement Planning Committee or by the town meeting. The 1995 architectural study found that it would cost approximately $800,000 yearly to maintain our 6 buildings in their present state. We've received an average of $250,000 per year over the past 20 years. Maintenance is high because both the age of the school buildings and also the amount of students, nearly 4,000 students, that pass through the school corridors each day. The condition of the school buildings has not been a high priority, and the educational plant has allowed to deteriorate. What has forced us to look at them is the shocking enrollment increase at all of our schools. Over the past 15 years, the state average of student population increase has been 12%, while Milton's has been 47%. One result of this dramatic increase in enrollment is a commensurate increase in the student-teacher ratio. In the routine audit, which the school department in the routine audit of the school department conducted by the Department of Revenue, it was noted that the increasing student-teacher ratio was what they called a troubling trend for Milton. Currently, we are not able or capable of keeping pace with technological and societal changes. Present buildings are not able to accommodate technology. Last month, I was at a dedication of a new media center in our high school library so that our students could research extensively with the computer access to the internet. During the dedication, as the last computer was turned on, the fuse blew and all the computers shut down. The students sat in front of blank screens for the remainder of their class as we all hoped that the computers could be restarted and that stored information would not be lost forever. In fact, the power could not be restored because the electrical system was dependent upon an ancient part that is no longer manufactured. Similarly, at a recent high school open house, parents filed down black corridors and stairwells due to the same electrical failure. I might add that the electrical part that I just mentioned was found as a backup somewhere in Georgia, but we had to wait to get it and wait to ship it up. And in the meantime, our corridors were black and darkened, and parents filed down corridors that were lit by home lamps on tables. We are dangerously out of date in our buildings. In fact, we are also out of compliance with existing fire and safety codes. We've been grandfathered in by codes that are decades old. Each year during my tenure on the committee, we've been warned by Milton's fire chief that the substandard conditions at the high school constitute a fire hazard. How often must we be warned? In the unlikely event of a tragic fire at any of our schools, who among us can say, "I didn't know"? The answer is none. You are all on notice. Most of us have heard about the overcrowding at Pierce Middle School, which was originally meant to house approximately 600 students and presently accommodates over 1,000. We've been part of a Channel 7 News special report done on the worst overcrowded schools in disrepair in Massachusetts. The news report depicted our children being schooled in former closets, bathrooms, and hallways. At the elementary level, we offer chorus in a coat room, computer lab in a basement hallway, and lunch during gym class, although it is separated by a curtain. We have 3 different special ed categories: severe physical handicaps requiring diaper changing, emotional disabilities, and learning disabilities, all being housed in the same small classroom. Some may ask, what's changed in the past 30 years? Well, we now have inclusion. Students of varying learning abilities and disabilities are all sharing the same classrooms wherever possible. Those who are too disabled are entitled to placements outside the schools. Class sizes need to be smaller because of varying abilities and needs that are housed together. We no longer have study periods as per ed reform. Students at the high school have a very concentrated school day. The state-mandated increase in teaching time requires more learning space. The classroom space has been lost over the past 20 years to the library, to special education, to preschool programs, and to administrative offices. We live in a very technologically demanding era on a smaller globe. Our schools need to be able to accommodate computer and language labs. We're shirking our responsibility to educate our students if we do not provide technology. The world will truly outpace us. Some may ask, what should we do now? Well, the first thing we should do is vote affirmatively to endorse the School Building Committee's project in its entirety to send the residents a vote. Today, Milton is at a crossroads. We must continue as an educational community. We must think long-term. We must remember that the price tag is high, and it will cost nearly as much to continue our Band-Aid approach to the school buildings. $45 million new versus $35 to $40 million old. State-of-the-art schools, computers, network wiring, lab equipment, and furniture versus old school buildings, old wiring, building code violations, poor heating, poor ventilation, poor lighting, continued overcrowding. Be visionary. Define our community in terms of education. The dollar cost is nearly the same, but the cost in human terms of not educating our children is enormous and will devastate our community. We must continue to address the issue of state aid for Milton at the state level. The taxpayers of Milton foot 90% of our educational costs. We must continue to petition the state to re-examine the ed reform formula as citizens, local officials, and state representatives. Ed reform has given us some admirable goals in education, but we must make every effort to attempt to revise the formula for fund distribution. The question has often been asked, what will the impact be of the new building on the operational budget of the schools? It is no secret that our operational budget has not been adequately funded over the years. We begin each year with a deficit, sometimes even level funded not even level funded from the year before. Administration cuts are unquestionably felt through the system. Our books are old and there are insufficient materials. There is not enough support staff in the administration. To answer the question of the impact of new buildings on the operational budget, it appears after extensive study by the business office, by the accountant, by town officials, and the architectural firm that the effect will mostly be felt in energy costs. Although we'll be operating with energy-efficient systems, we will need more energy because of the added space. Despite the fact that the teaching staff comprises approximately 80% of our operating budget, the overall impact of the new buildings in terms of teacher hire is minimal. The teaching staff is already low, but what we have can be spread to the new space. Our staff is ready to go. All we need is a place to go. We must be proud of our educational achievements in Milton. As noted in the Department of Revenue report, despite the fact that the average Milton teacher salary is at or below the state average, the students' test scores are above the state average. The administration has successfully concentrated on curriculum improvement, but we must provide the appropriate environment for education to take place. We must show a commitment to our children and to our teachers that we believe in what they're doing and that we support them. We cannot ask them to teach or to learn in classrooms that are either freezing, broiling, flooded, improperly ventilated, or overcrowded. We cannot ask them to eat in a dark cafeteria or learn in a classroom that is not lit. We cannot say that we believe in education but do nothing to improve the learning environment. We cannot continue to ignore their complaints about leaks, electricity, heating, or ventilation and still say that we care about education. It's time to house our great curriculum in exemplary buildings. During the past 2 years, I've seen some of the most spectacular school buildings in different communities. The atmosphere is so bright and upbeat. It makes you want to learn when you walk into the schools. Our tax dollars are going very far to benefit these different communities who have already made the decision to build schools. It's time to do the same for our own. We have no alternative. I'd like now to introduce the superintendent of our Milton Public Schools, Dr. Mary Grassa O'Neill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Cannon. Thank you, Town Moderator Ward, for giving me permission to speak this evening. Chairman Cannon, Chairman Neely, Chairman McCarthy, Chairman Winchester, elected and appointed officials, good evening. Usually when I'm at school, everybody says good evening back, or, you know. Good evening. Let me start by thanking the original Building Needs Committee and our original architect, as well as our current School Building Committee and our current architect, and our school committees, and all of the elected and appointed boards, and all of the volunteers who have helped to get us to this point. It has taken a great deal of hard work, a lot of talent, a lot of vision, and a lot of energy. And I am very grateful for that. I'd like to start tonight by asking you to do some imagining with me. I'd like you to imagine that it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Think about the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Do you enjoy being on the roadways the Wednesday before Thanksgiving? Do you enjoy the traffic on the Southeast Expressway on that day? Do you enjoy trying to get in and out of Logan Airport on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving? Well, on these days, we usually undergo some really unpleasant travel conditions. We inch along in bumper-to-bumper traffic, along clogged roadways and thoroughfares. We endure long waiting lines at toll booths and at ticket counters. Now, most of us don't have helicopter access, so we can avoid these situations. Yet our children enjoy overcrowded conditions like these each and every day in the Milton Public Schools, where we have 4,000 students and we only have space for 3,000 students. Most of us wouldn't want to work in an office building where there were 4,000 workers but only 3,000 workstations. Or we wouldn't want to stay in a hotel that put 4,000 guests in rooms designed for 3,000. Please imagine with me a little bit more. Would you want your airplane to land at an airport that was built and equipped in 1909, like Milton High School? Would you want to get a root canal in a dentist's office that was built and equipped in 1934? Would you want to get your car serviced at a dealership that was last upgraded in 1952? I was rehearsing these remarks last night with my husband, and my son was in the other room, and he's a teenager. Usually I think they're never listening to me. And he came in and said, "Hey, Mom, why don't you ask this question? Would you want your children to be treated by a pediatrician in a hospital that was built and equipped 65 years ago?" I thought it was a pretty good question, so I thought I'd add it. He said to me, "Mom, please don't bring that up." Education is as important and as difficult as flying planes, drilling teeth, and staying healthy. But in Milton, we try to accomplish this difficult task in buildings that are on average 65 years old. One is almost 100 years old. For the past 20 years, a man named Jim Anderson has been a supervisor for the Department of Education's School Building Assistance Program, known as SBA, and you'll hear a little more about SBA later tonight. It was his job to examine school buildings being considered for reimbursement and make some judgments about the requests. When visiting schools, he told me the first thing he looked for was structural integrity. His primary goal was always to find ways to reuse existing buildings. Jim said he has been in more school buildings all over Massachusetts than anyone else in the state, and I have no reason not to believe Jim Anderson. He visited our buildings, and this is what he found. At Collycott School, he walked in and he bounced up and down on the floors like this. And he said the springiness of the floors made him question the structural integrity of the building. This conclusion has since been confirmed by the School Building Committee. Jim Anderson did not tour the Tucker School. He wouldn't even get out of the car. Milton can do better, he said. The state will not reimburse Milton for remodeling this building. He referenced the tiny lot, 1.7 acres, compared to the state standard of 12 to 16 acres for an elementary school with Tucker's enrollment. Jim Anderson didn't even want to finish his tour of the Pierce Middle School. He had a physical reaction to the lower level building where we've carved out so many new classrooms. "Get me out of here," he said. He thought the air he was breathing was unhealthy. He felt his eyes were watering and said he couldn't believe we have been allowed to educate children in some of the spaces we were using. He described the physical condition as brutal. Yet every day, we put 1,000 children and faculty members in the Pierce School, which, by the way, has a capacity of only 600 students. In subsequent meetings and conversations about our buildings with Jim Anderson, the most recent was this week because I did not want to misquote him here tonight, he was very positive about our academic programs. He talked about how well organized and well run the schools are. He said our buildings are clean and polished, which, thanks to good custodial and maintenance work, they are cleaned and polished. Overall, though, Jim Anderson said he has never seen so many students stuffed into so many unsatisfactory spaces. He said our buildings were the most overcrowded he has seen. Now, at one point he said, with the possible exception of Lawrence, and on further thought he said, they're the worst. He described our school buildings with these two words, deplorable and an abomination. In no uncertain terms, Jim Anderson said that our system needs a complete overhaul. Getting ready for tonight's meeting, and through this whole process, we were asked to review 40 years of annual town meeting reports. That was a very interesting experience, I might add. But I'm only going to report on a few things. We found that starting in the late 50s, your superintendent and other officials in the town have pointed out the need for new construction, renovation, and additional space. Starting in 1958 and 59, town meeting reports called for the purchase of land and the construction of a new elementary school. In 1967, they cited the need for modern facilities, regardless of enrollment data, to better house specialist subjects. They gave as examples science, art, and music. In 1970, the report stated that the number one priority of the schools was the need for physical space. In 1971, almost 30 years ago, a visiting team from the accreditation company known as the New England Association of Schools and Colleges states, the ability of Milton High School to provide a well-rounded program is impeded by a totally inadequate plant and recommends that the town build a new facility. The mid-1970s called for renovations and additions to our elementary schools and renovations and or rebuilding our middle schools and our high school. With few exceptions over the past 30 years, most of these recommendations have gone unheeded. An accreditation team from the New England Association of Schools and Colleges will be here at Milton High School next year. One important part of the accreditation process is school facilities. Ours don't measure up. And I don't have to tell you what happens to a community if a school is placed on probation or loses its accreditation. If we are in the process of building a new school, the visiting team will take that into account, and we may be spared embarrassment or worse. In my mind, the question is not why should we build new buildings? The question really is, why shouldn't we build new buildings? We are educating our children in buildings that have been grandfathered under decades-old building codes. Great strides have been made in life safety systems over the past 50 to 100 years, but they have bypassed our buildings. Some of these life safety systems include improvements like sprinkler systems to protect life and property in case of fire, HVAC systems that provide cleaner, healthier air to breathe, steel and beam systems to improve structural integrity. Thousands of children and hundreds of adults use our buildings all day, every day. This includes Milton Public Schools, Milton Public School programs, but also an extensive community use. Better facilities leads to better programs, and better programs lead to better results. Look at what happened when you built new science classrooms. Enrollment in science courses skyrocketed. The number of students enrolled in science courses is up 30%. The number of students who exceed the minimum graduation requirement of 3 years of science is over 70%, with 17% of students taking 5 science courses in 4 years. Teachers got energized. The curriculum was enriched. 4 new science courses were added. Significantly larger numbers of students and higher percentages of students enrolled in advanced placement science courses. Last year, our advanced placement scores in chemistry, for example, exceeded the national average. 83% of Milton High School students passed, with only 51% nationally. And 73% of our AP students passed both AP Biology and/or Physics. Imagine what can happen when we can upgrade all of our facilities. We need regular classroom space. We need space for art. We need space for music. We need library space, physical education, special education, kindergarten, and science. We need adult space. We need meeting space. We need media space. And we need technology space. I've heard many of you ask questions. Many of you have asked me directly, or you've asked others, and the questions have been passed on to me. I'd like to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about the school building proposal. The first is whether that the school system that I have the honor of leading is skilled enough to manage its resources. I believe the answer is yes. But maybe you didn't see the results of the Mass Department of Revenue audit. 4 agents from the Department of Revenue spent 8 weeks here in my office last spring during May and June. They were in my office, you see, because there wasn't anywhere else that they could meet. So as we talk about overcrowded conditions, I had to move out so they could move in with their computers, and, they are number crunchers. I only got in trouble with them once when I told them I was looking for an objective point of view. Everybody sat up very straight, and they said, "We are the Department of Revenue." And I said, "Oh, yes, that's right." They performed for us what's known as an Education Management Accountability Audit, an audit each school district either has had or will have. They spent their couple of months here going through our records for the past 10 years. The result? Milton has excellent student performance with below average revenues. These are some of the Department of Revenue's findings. They found a 47.6% increase in student enrollment without any new school construction. Our enrollment increase is almost 3 times the state average. They found an increasingly larger pupil-teacher ratio, translation, above average class size, which they called a troubling trend for education in Milton. They found test scores which exceed the state average. They found that although Milton has not received significant increases in state aid, it has focused on managerial accountability and curriculum improvements. The audit team also made site visits to all 6 school buildings. They wrote that they found these buildings to be old, overcrowded, and in need of major renovations or enhancements. Another question I've heard: have we maintained our buildings adequately in the past? Why build new buildings if we can't take care of the ones we have? I'm the first one to say that we have not had adequate resources to take care of our building's capital needs, at least in my 6.5 years here. In that period, our allocation from the town has averaged around $250,000. Based on a 1995 architectural study, we should be spending at least $800,000 per year on these buildings. And with some new figures I got today, the figure perhaps should be quite higher than that. So no, we're not keeping up. But is this an argument for not building new buildings? No. The current effort will create new resources for buildings. Over the years, the town has not had enough money for renovation or capital projects. With a 47% increase in student enrollment over the past 15 years, the town has had trouble keeping up. And is it any wonder? The town simply has not had the money. And when the school department has had to make the hard decisions about whether to keep teachers or renovate buildings, we have made the decision to keep the teachers teaching our children. Another question we're frequently asked is this: will buildings come at the expense of books? Again, I am the first to say, and you have heard me say it here so often, we spend too little on books. Our per capita expenditure on our school students is below the state average. This is a fact of life that our warrant committee, our school committee, our faculty and staff attempt to deal with every single day. But again, this is not a reason not to build new buildings. I personally am convinced that new buildings will create new pride in and new support for our public schools. And finally, all of us who live in Milton have to ask ourselves, whether we personally can afford the taxes that will be associated with these buildings. I won't presume to answer that question for anyone else, but I fervently hope that town meeting gives the voters the opportunity to ask and answer that question for themselves. I believe that Milton is at a crossroads. Our school buildings are not unsafe today. If they were, I wouldn't allow your children or mine in them. But they are sure to be unsafe in the future. These buildings are already outmoded and obsolete. They are underpowered, underlit, and underventilated. In my professional opinion, we have a fine school system here in Milton. We have great and talented teachers, great and talented children, and great and talented parents. But we have terribly substandard buildings. These buildings are terribly overcrowded, and more children are on the way. Where will we put those children? Without these new buildings, your superintendent of schools has no answer for you. I strongly encourage your support of the School Building Committee's recommendations for new and renovated school buildings. Thank you so much for your attention.
Mr. Charles Winchester, the chair of the School Building Committee, is recognized, and he will introduce the various speakers for his portion of the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Winchester.
Good evening. If you can't hear me, let me know, and I'll pick the microphone up and put it closer to my mouth. As the moderator indicated, I'm Charlie Winchester and serve as chairman of the School Building Committee. And I'm also a town meeting member from Precinct 3. I'd like to acknowledge the other members of our committee. I won't ask them all to stand, but I'll just mention who they are. Mary Cobb is the secretary of the committee. She's one of the two school committee representatives on the School Building Committee. And Mary is a former 4th grade teacher at Pierce and a former 2nd and 3rd grade teacher and guidance counselor at Collycott. She's a town meeting member from Precinct 6. Tony Cicchello, who will speak after I finish, is a town meeting member from Precinct 4, and he's an attorney in Boston. Jeff Cruikshank, who is seated directly in front of me, is the other school committee representative on the School Building Committee, and is a town meeting member from Precinct 3, and Jeff is a communications consultant. Mary Fitzgerald is a town meeting member from Precinct 4 and a realtor in Milton. Liz Major is one of the 2 architects on the School Building Committee, and Tom McGrath is the other architect on our committee. Bob Varneren is a town meeting member from Precinct 3 and a library trustee as well. Bob is retired, but previously was Director of Environmental Health and Safety at Boston University. And last but not least, John Vergona is a town meeting member from Precinct 6. John is a computer specialist. We also have with us this evening our architect Carl Franceschi from the firm of Drummy Roseanne Anderson, DRA for short, which we retained for the study and preliminary planning, which brings us here this evening. I've been upstaged a little bit by the prior speakers, so I may try to abbreviate some of my comments, but I plan to proceed with a short explanation of the background which led to the recommendations being considered at this special town meeting. Tony Cicchello will then make a presentation concerning school facilities needs. That way you can get rid of me for a few minutes. After Tony completes his presentation, we've asked the architect Carl Franceschi to follow and to offer a glimpse of the possibilities for modern schools, as someone's called it, the vision thing. And then I'll return to explain the proposed plans, preliminary plans, and for a brief conclusion. Much of the background and history of the schools has been explained, particularly by Susan Kiernan, and as she noted, the process which resulted in the establishment of the school building committee actually goes back some time. Over the years, the town has funded, at the request of the school committee, a few significant capital expenditures, such as replacing roofs or boilers where needed. With the exception of the science wing at the high school, however, no major renovation or reconstruction has occurred in the schools for many years. In 1995, the school committee had the architectural inspection that Susan Kiernan referred to, estimating renovation repair costs just to keep the buildings going at $10 million. And note that that would have been a non-reimbursable program to update and repair buildings. In the meantime, school population burgeoned. It was mentioned 47%, but I think the numbers are interesting as well. Burgeoned from a low point of about 2,600 in the mid-1980s to 3,900 today. Tremendous growth. To accommodate this growth, rooms were created within the existing schools. I won't go through the litany of places where they were created, except to note that there's a vice principal at Pierce who has a very nicely tiled office. Concerned about the situation, the school committee in early 1998 commissioned Tappé Associates to conduct the preliminary needs study, which led to an article at the May 1998 town meeting requesting the appointment of a school building committee and an appropriation of monies to for the purpose of planning the construction, and I'm quoting now, construction, alteration, renovation, remodeling, and furnishing of school buildings. The school committee had originally proposed an appropriation of $1 million for this work, as outlined by Tappé Associates. The actual amount appropriated was $350,000, and then last May an additional appropriation of $40,000 was made for a total of $390,000. The moderator appointed our committee in June of 1998, and as noted, since that time we have met, including this evening, 56 times. We met initially with Tappé Associates and a demographer employed in the Tappé study. We wanted to get a handle on those numbers. And we've additionally, in addition to our own meetings, we've met several times with the school committee, the selectmen, and other town boards and committees, including the warrant committee and the park department. And we've attended hearings, formal hearings with the Conservation Commission. We also met with educators to learn of their needs, and as plans developed from conceptual to preliminary plans that we're presenting tonight, we also met with parents and school neighbors and abutters to learn of and to address their concerns to the extent feasible. We've also, frankly, done our best to publicize our activities and plans in order to keep the public informed. Early on, we learned that it would be necessary to seek new bid proposals for the architectural work, and as a result of this process, we retained DRA. DRA then conducted with its engineering consultants a study of existing conditions in the schools. We also commissioned a second demographic study, which essentially confirmed the original study reported in the Tappé report. We then reviewed a number of scenarios for a master plan to deal with the issues in the various schools and considered variations within each of the scenarios. We finally recommended, and the school committee adopted, the master plan, which I described at last year's annual town meeting, which I'll describe again somewhat later. DRA then proceeded to develop preliminary building plans to meet the educational specifications of the school department, and the plans and specifications were approved by the school committee this past fall. In the meantime, the plans, the master plan, not the preliminary plans, but the master plan was presented to the school building assistance group in the Department of Education, and they confirmed that the town will be eligible for reimbursement at 61% for projects submitted by next June 30th actually, although to get on the next priority list, the submission would have to be made by June 1st. This rate applies to interest costs as well as principal, and includes not only construction costs, but furnishings and equipment. We've had a busy year. With that background, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Tony Ciccello, who will detail some of the facilities needs issues, which is fundamental to the plan we're proposing. Suffice it to say in advance that our committee has concluded that the need for new and for renovated facilities is clear and compelling. Tony.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to speak from here because I'm going to try to be clicking the slides here as I go through. As Charlie mentioned, my name's Tony Ciccello. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 4, member of the school building committee, and also parent of students at Tucker School. Can we turn that light off back there possibly? Is that possible? Spotlight? I don't know if anybody's back there. Okay. Let me get started in the meantime. My job tonight is to talk about the need, basically the problems at our schools. The things that I'm going to talk about are detailed in a significant detail, thank you, in the warrant, and they're certainly detailed much more precisely in the 2-volume facilities study that we put together with the architects for this. What I'm going to try to do tonight is just outline some of the key problems and then focus on the practical day-to-day ways that these problems affect our students in our schools, our teachers, and our ability to educate our children in the town of Milton. The problem, as I have seen it, as we've seen it, basically breaks down into 4 categories. Our buildings are crowded, they're crumbling, they're obsolete, and at this point I would say that they're unreasonably dangerous. Let me talk about the first problem, the overcrowding. That's a problem today, a serious problem today, and all the information that we have says that it's going to become substantially more serious as time goes on. Over the past 10 years, I have a figure of roughly 40% increase in enrollment. If you look back a little further, it's probably more substantial. The result of these increases in enrollment is that our schools are essentially bulging at the seams. We have way too many children in those buildings. One of the first things that we did in our study, and we had the architects and the engineers look at, was the effective capacity of these buildings. How many students can we effectively educate? Should we be educating in these buildings? And with the facilities we've gotten today, we're 900 seats short, at least. At the elementary school, you can see this is a chart from the warrant for the elementary school. It's on page 16 of your warrant. For the secondary schools, it's on page 19 and 20. To look at the shortfall today, 500 students at the elementary level. At the secondary level, you have almost 400 students, or more than 400 students short. That affects certain schools in particular. If you look at the elementary statistics, you have Tucker and Collicott that are almost 1.5 times the students they should have there. The Pierce has been pointed out in great detail is horrifically overcrowded. Now, how have we gotten by if we have that many more students than we really can handle? Well, we've created, and I put create in quotation marks, additional space. We've taken normal-sized classrooms, legitimately sized classrooms, and we've divided them. We've taken closets, we've taken hallways, we've taken bathrooms, you name it, we've taken space and made it into educational space. At the Pierce, you can see roughly 40 classrooms has mushroomed, ballooned into 63 teaching spaces. And the focus throughout has been on ensuring that we focus on the essentials, that we teach our kids math and science and language, and those have been the primary focus. Here, let me show you some of the classrooms. This is one of the classrooms that we refer to as the bowling alley classrooms. These are windowless storage rooms at the Pierce building that were turned into classrooms for 27 students. As you look at some of these spaces, I'd like you to just focus on them. Keep them in mind when you see Mr. Franceschi come up in a few minutes and show you some of the classrooms in modern school buildings. Notice the comparison. This is one of the worst classrooms that we have in our system. This is a former maintenance storage room. The shelving was taken down from the walls. This building in heavy rains floods with 2 or 3 inches of water. The janitors come in at 4:30. They get the water out of there. If we're lucky and the rain doesn't continue, the children will go to school in that damp room for the day. If not, the library at Pierce gets closed and they have class in the library. As we can see, by creating these new spaces, we've created a lot of problems. We have inappropriate teaching spaces, like the ones that we've just shown. We have missing spaces. We have almost a total lack of storage, and we have inappropriate and inadequate administrative spaces. Let's look at some classrooms. This is another bowling alley classroom, a windowless classroom. This is a former teacher's room at Pierce that's now a classroom for 27 students. These are a couple of windowless classrooms at the high school. At the Collicott, the classrooms are so small that we don't have room for computer workstations in the classroom. We don't have room to do group work there, so they do it in the hall. Missing teaching spaces. At the elementary school level, we have no music rooms. We have one art room at the Cunningham School tucked up in the museum space on the 4th floor. Otherwise, we have art on a cart. This is Tucker School, where my children go to school. This is the Collicott School. This is the classroom art in the regular classroom. At the Collicott, it's particularly difficult because there's no elevator, so the art teacher has to carry the things up by herself. Let's look at storage. At the Collicott School, because we've taken all the closets and made them into classrooms, you have storage in stairwells and hallways, and the gym equipment is stored in the electrical room. At the Glover, we have a cafeteria, auditorium, gymnasium all in one. This space is the storage space on the stage for the gym equipment. And these are the ubiquitous storage trailers at Pierce, and we have them at other buildings as well. Administrative space is totally lacking and inadequate. We have needs for special education meetings, parent-teacher meetings. This is the principal's office at Tucker. If you need to have a special ed meeting, you can't have it in the guidance office because the guidance counselor is in a closet that's too small. The 5 special ed teachers are in one room, so this is the best space that's available. If you have too many people that won't fit in there, you have to go in the library, and the library is closed. This is the well-tiled assistant principal's office at Pierce. If you ask Principal George Moran, she's got the better office because it's not leaky and molding like his. This is several offices at the high school. This is the nurse's office at the Glover School. It's in the former kindergarten cloakroom. You can see the door over there to the left-hand side doesn't provide that much privacy for children in there. That's some of our overcrowding problem today. I have many more that I could show, but I'm not going to. The overcrowding problem is not going to go away. The two independent demographic projections that we had, both show demographics, student populations increasing through 2009 as far out as the demographic projections go. And you can see these are, again, some charts from the warrant. These demographic projections are probably conservative because they don't take into account newer developments in town, the Fuller Trust development, the Horton Place development, things like that. That's a little bit about the overcrowding and some of the effects of the overcrowding. Let's talk about crumbling. Our buildings are old. As mentioned, our high school was built in 1909, and our newest buildings were built in 52 and 53. So we have 50 to 90 years of age, and that's constant. Constant use during the school year, substantial use in the afternoons and evenings, substantial use during the summer. Let me show you just quickly, I'll flip through these quickly, some of the issues that we have at some of the buildings. The Collycott School is a good example of one of the buildings that really looks terrific from a distance. It's really nice architecture, and it looks like a real nice building. When you move in closer and start to take a look at some of the brickwork, you see that there's cracking running through most of it. The bricks here, we've been told, were of poor quality and are failing at this point. Again, the Collycott School is wearing on the inside. This is a new ceiling that leaking took right down. At the Cunningham, again, we have crumbling on the outside, crumbling on the inside. This is a building we're going to keep and renovate. That's termite damage to some of the nice portions of the building there. Here again, you have cracking, rotting fixture underneath the gymnasium. On the inside of the Cunningham, you see original floors that are wearing out after many years since the building was built in the 35. And again, you have water damage and old lighting in many of these buildings. You'll find these problems are common throughout the system. At the Glover, many of the problems are the same with water damage and the like. The most serious problems at Glover tend to focus around the portables. The town a number of years ago purchased a number of portable classrooms for $1 a piece. We've since gotten our money's worth. They're ready to go. The 67 addition is actually in worse shape than the original building at Glover. This is the boys' bathroom and the girls' bathroom at Glover. Again, I'll stop for just a second. I don't have slides here of the Tucker. Tucker is actually one of our oldest buildings, but as mentioned, the reason that we propose to take Tucker out of service is not because the building is crumbling as such. In fact, it's in pretty darn good shape. It's a pretty solid building, although I could certainly find a lot of pictures and things of things that do need work. Some of the key issues at Tucker are the size of the site, the size of the building, and the classrooms in the building, particularly when you look at how many students you can house at that building, and our needs to house 21 or 2,200 students system-wide at the elementary level, antiquated systems there, handicapped accessibility. So those are the reasons that the Tucker is being proposed to come out of service. These are some pictures of Pierce. And many people are sort of frustrated that we're proposing to get rid of the Pierce building, but there, again, are problems here. When you look close, you find the kind of cracking and some of the other problems of crumbling here at this school as well. And again, these problems are inside and out. That window was an energy conservation measure, and here apparently the janitors overbuffed the floors. The high school also has issues. You can see that stairway is listing to the side. And again, you look closely at these nice ornamental features and you find out that there's pieces chipping, and you hope you're not under the stairway when they come down. And again, substantial age and wear on the building. That's some of the crumbling issues. Let's talk about obsolescence. These buildings, in many respects, just don't meet our needs today. There's problems of there's changes in technology, changes in educational programs, state mandates, and then issues with respect to just old and antiquated systems. Let's look at the kinds of spaces that we need now. Our classrooms at the elementary school are typically very small. At the elementary level, students do a lot of group work now, and as you saw from the Collicott pictures, our elementary schools just don't accommodate that. You'll see the plans in your warrant, and Charlie may flash them up with respect to the middle school that has a team teaching concept and has spaces for groupings and group work and things like that. That's not available at our schools. Let's look at some of our computer facilities. This is the Collicott, down the basement stairs. The computer room here is in the basement hallway. It's actually much bigger than the one that's at Glover, 350 square feet. For the computer room there, that was carved off the library. The same was done at Tucker. You may have seen this picture. This is another well-tiled room. Unfortunately, this is for our special ed students. And again, the Collicott classrooms are small enough that they don't serve the needs. They don't have space for computer workstations. We have certain things that just don't work. Cafeteria, gym, auditorium all at once at Glover. At Pierce, you have an auditorium that requires 3 sittings to get the school in. At Tucker, where my children go, the cafeteria only takes 1/5 of the school population. So that means lunch starts at 11, it ends at 1:30. When you look at the overcrowding issue, this is also the music room there. So you need to try to squeeze in the music classes around the lunches, and it gets complicated at best. We have need for additional science and language labs. Let's talk about special education spaces. All of our buildings were built before special education was anything that we needed to do. The special education spaces that we have today are honestly deplorable. This is a former custodian's room at the Cunningham that's now special ed space. This is a space in which 4 different activities at the Cunningham can be going on at once. You can have a half a dozen or more special education students, occupational therapy, physical therapy, student being tube fed or diaper changed in that room at the same time. This is a special ed computer lab that you've seen. Somebody mentioned study halls. We have new mandates that require more space. You can't put 100 students in a study hall. Handicapped accessibility is also an issue. At essentially all of our buildings, if you're handicapped, from the outside trying to get in, you've got to go to the side exits. If you're able to get inside, you're probably not going to do much better. Collicott's completely inaccessible. There's no elevator there, so if you're in a wheelchair and you're in the Collicott district, you won't go to school with your friends, you'll go next door to Cunningham. Let's look at the Cunningham building that you'll be going to. This has wings off of it that are completely inaccessible. It has nice pocket doors there. It's a nice feature in the building. But again, it's not handicapped accessible. You have issues. This is another nice classroom that's not accessible. This is another fire door that's not accessible. You'll note that behind this door, there are actually 2 classrooms that are not protected by what presumably is a fire barrier. Handicap accessibility at the Tucker School is a problem. The bathrooms are all between floors, with the exception of one handicap bathroom that was put in on the first floor. Let's look at some of the antiquated systems. There's been reference, this is the original ventilator at the high school. It's actually not in operation. I don't know when it was last in operation. What we use now are these unit ventilators. Most of them don't work. The ones that do work often have to be turned off because they overheat. When we replaced a number of them and hooked them up to the electrical system, we had a similar problem to the one that Ms. Kiernan mentioned. It caused all sorts of problems with the electrical system. The electrical systems system-wide are old. Here you can see some of the original panels. That's, I believe, an AC/DC panel at the Cunningham School, although I'm told that the direct current is no longer operating. Our heating system is an old steam trap system in most cases. It doesn't work very well. It's very difficult to control. You have hot and cold everywhere, and the steam traps are expensive. Lighting is another expensive, inadequate in many cases. At the high school, we actually have lighting that you can't purchase from the state bid list because the lighting fixtures are so old, so we pay full price. That's crowded, crumbling, obsolescence. Let's talk about unreasonably dangerous. Now, in showing this and talking about this, my goal is not to be alarmist. There's danger and there's risk in every part of life. But some risks are unreasonably dangerous and do not make sense to take. And given the reports and the studies that we've done, there are things now, specific things and general system-wide things, that it's no longer reasonable for us to ignore or get away with. Let's look at a few of them. We have a high school attic in the 1909 wing of this building. It's a wood structure. There are no fire breaks in that structure, and obviously no sprinkler system. If a fire starts in one end of that attic, it's going to rage to the other very quickly. This is the electrical room here at the high school. That pipe up there, you can see right there, that's the gas main for the building. It runs through the electrical room. We have things that are deteriorating throughout the system and causing problem and danger and need to be addressed. This is a stairway. You can see the big heavy stones on there. They started getting loose and rocking back and forth. $17,000 later, they were fixed. This is an asbestos situation. We've got asbestos and lead issues in all these buildings because they're old. We control them as best we can. Actually, this is a situation, those could probably come down. This is a closet at Cunningham where the fire department kept being called to the building and couldn't figure out what was setting off the sensors. Eventually, they looked in this storeroom down in the basement and found that there was a leaking steam pipe, and so they had to fix that. They also found that there was asbestos. The room was loaded with asbestos, so the men in the white suits came and cleaned it up and took care of it. But in addition to that type of issue, you have floors throughout the system that are in many cases asbestos tiles that are going to be failing and we're going to have to stay right on top of. Our architects are recommending that we replace all of the drinking water supplies throughout our buildings because given the age of the systems, they bring lead issues. Somebody mentioned the fire codes, seismic codes. Those are issues that, for the most part, we're grandfathered on now. But there's a reason that there's been change in those codes over the last 50 to 90 years. Those are safety issues which, especially when combined with all the other situations that we've seen, it's no longer reasonable for us to ignore. So, as I've mentioned, the problems are crowded, crumbling, obsolete, and unreasonably dangerous. These problems are system-wide. They run from the bottom of the system to the top and back down again. We need to address them right away. We do have serious problems. I would suggest, though, that at the same time we look at these things as a problem, we also look at them as an opportunity. We have a chance to do something about these issues. We have a chance to make an investment with a lot of help, 61% help from the state. We've got a chance to say that Milton is an education town, and education is important to us. The town has made these investments in the past. In the 20s and 30s, we built Tucker, Collicott, Cunningham. In the 50s, we built the Pierce Elementary, we built the Glover, we built the Pierce Middle School, or junior high school then. We've done it before, we can do it now, and I'd say now is the time. Thank you.
On a little brighter note, most of us have not had occasion to visit new schools, and in order that people can understand what new schools look like, on the inside particularly, we may drive past a new school occasionally. We've asked our architect Carl Franceschi to show us some slides to give us a feel for and a vision of what new schools can provide. Carl?
Thank you, Charlie. My name is Carl Franceschi. I'm with the architectural firm of Drummy, Rosane, Anderson. And we would like to take a few minutes just to show you what's happening out there in public school construction in Massachusetts. It is what we specialize in, so we've taken a few slides of some of our projects to show you what some of the possibilities are. First, we're just going through some of the renderings of what we've proposed here, and we want you to keep in mind that these renderings are just to give you a feel for the buildings on the site. They're not meant to be definitive at this point in the process. But to help you visualize what some of these could be, we do want to take you through some photographs of some of our projects. One of the things to keep in mind is that for many communities, public school buildings do represent the community's image, their self-image of how they see themselves, what value they place on education. And our buildings try to reflect the civic pride that they have. They also are trying to pick up on some of the context. You'll see there's an old fire tower in this neighborhood that was picked up in this new school building here. A building that serves as a backdrop to a public park, and in fact did not intrude on that public park in its siting. The buildings that are scaled to the scale of, in this case, elementary school children. This is a K through 4 facility. There are porch-like elements, there are low-scaled entry elements to make children feel welcome, to make teachers and educators want to work in these buildings. And we've also dealt with many renovation projects. This is a 1960s, early 60s building, and we added on to it back here a new entrance, a new library structure there. We think it pulls the whole project together. That's one of the things renovation projects can do, to brighten up and pull together the existing facility as well. One of the projects at Glover proposes a courtyard. This is a possibility of what a courtyard might look like. It has some green space, it gets light into the center of the building, it allows some outdoor activities to happen. In essence, you gain some outdoor educational space. And we've even worked in some historical situations like we may find here at the Cunningham School. This school, this is the original building. It was actually built as a high school, but it was since converted to an elementary school. This is new construction done just a few years ago to add on to that building. It can be done. Again, the buildings reflect the context and the neighborhoods that they're in. Here's another elementary school addition that was dealing with a round building, actually, as the existing context. We added a 2-story classroom wing and a new round entrance element there. An all-new building, seen from both sides, a double-sided entrance here. And this is a double school that has many of the same principles as being proposed for the Collycott and Cunningham. This is actually a combination of an elementary school on the right, a middle school on the left, and the shared facilities down the center. This is a library on the 2nd floor, administrative space on the 1st floor. That same building at night, again, showing the different scales. This is the more playful, the lower scaled element for elementary school, the somewhat larger element for the middle school entrance. And just to take you quickly through some of the interiors of these school buildings. And again, they do not need to supply specific solutions to what's being proposed here in Milton, but they do show you some of the possibilities. These are library facilities here, getting light from up high. It frees up some of the wall space for stacks. Here again, you'll see the amount of computers and the use of technologies throughout these schools, one of the serious improvements you can make in these kinds of projects. An elementary school facility. This is actually a K through 2 facility, and you can see it's more appropriately scaled. It's used as a gathering spot, as a classroom really, with still access to library and media materials. This is the inside of the round building there that was previously shown on the outside. Other library spaces in some of our other schools. A library in a renovated space. Here's a cafetorium, a combination auditorium and cafeteria here that's used for performance and used for cafeteria and special activities. This is that double school, and this is actually a double-sized cafeteria. There's a dividing wall that can be closed along this line so that the elementary school children can be separated from the middle school children, yet they still share the kitchen and the serving lines for that economy and efficiency. a full-size gymnasium. Computer rooms obviously are seriously lacking in Milton and can be integrated into the program, and specialty classrooms like science classrooms, even at the younger elementary grades. This is an art room, some other art spaces, some multi-purpose space. This is actually a cluster space used by 4 or 5 classrooms. In that reading room that's inside of the round entry in the renovation addition project I showed. Some of the lobbies and entrance and corridor spaces we'd like to show you, again, through the use of economical, durable materials, you can still achieve bright, welcoming spaces in these schools. Easily maintained, durable, and yet economical. Even in corridor spaces, that's showing handicapped accessibility. Here's some corridor spaces, varying heights, varying widths. They do not have to be dim, dark spaces. Even this is a more Main Street kind of a corridor with different ceiling heights, different corridor widths to emphasize the entrance to the library in this case. And again, you'll see easily maintained, durable materials. A lot of the aesthetic is achieved through color. Color is very cheap. Here's the rendering for the middle school and some middle school photographs we'd like to show you. This is a middle school in Middleborough. I believe the Warrant Committee actually visited. That's designed by taking the 1,000 pupil elementary or middle school and breaking it into components. This is the main entrance. Beyond here, peeking up, is the cafeteria rather. This is the library. Each of the components of the program are expressed as an individual element, collected together as a village. A middle school where the classrooms are separated in a 2-story wing, the more common facilities, the core facilities, in a 1-story, open to the community after hours, easily accessible. There's the entrance. This school has sloped roofs over the entire building. Not all buildings have to have flat roofs. And again, it can bring in residential scale elements to help break down the scale of these projects. This is in a middle school in Hanson that just recently won a national award, actually, for its design. Inside some of these schools, this is the main circulation space, the entrance and main stairway in a 750 pupil school. The street concept in that Middleborough Middle School, where there's actually outdoor elements sort of introduced here, and the entrances to each of the components is expressed almost as if it was an outside building, but again using economical, durable materials. Taking you into that library space, very high under the octagonal roof, a very nice sense of light in there, very welcoming, and a lot of technology integrated into the space. Another library with a different kind of treatment, specialty classrooms. This is sewing and cooking, an art room, auditoria of many different sizes and shapes. This one's on the magnitude of 300 students, but this one is up to 450. Again, these are fully handicapped accessible facilities. They have modern light, sound systems. They work for both music and for drama. And this is a renovated auditorium, perhaps similar to the treatment that may happen here when this building is renovated for a middle school. Basically, restoration was done on this, restoring the seat fabrics, the ceiling treatments, the colors, the plaster, and so forth. In middle schools, one of the latest teaching philosophies is team teaching, and these kinds of spaces reinforce that notion. This is a cluster space, which essentially in the program is a corridor space, but it's been widened and with a little bit of upgrading and how it's furnished. It's used as an educational space for 50 to 75 students, and all of the classrooms in this team open off of this space. These two can be done in different sizes and configurations. This is a cafetorium at the middle school level. Another purely cafeteria in this case. Again, note the sense of light that's brought into these spaces. Some high school photographs. This is a high school addition, actually, where the gymnasium was replaced with a new field house, a new separate entrance into that field house, and a new main entrance to the school was introduced here. There's another shot of that. a totally different style high school, different budget, different context. Again, this was an addition renovation project. A new high school, a more industrial look. This is actually a vocational school. It has precast concrete and metal panel exteriors. Again, our office does a wide variety of project types. A different kind of courtyard, perhaps at the high school level, more hard surfaces, more paved for exterior use. You can see the science greenhouse here as well. The library is below, opening out into that courtyard. The corridors in high schools need to be wide, need to be made with durable materials, but even here again we introduced some lights, some light from above, so these totally interior spaces are still bright places to pass through. The library at this level, a bit more sophisticated, a bit more individual study carrels now than you'll find at the elementary levels. More like a public library in some senses. Here, this is a renovation actually of a library done in a circular fashion, with the circulation desk is actually right there at the center of the circle, and the stacks radiate out from it. And of course, technology is certainly a standard for all of today's schools. In this case, this is a tech ed room where students learn hands-on learning. Some periods they're actually assembling kits. In other periods, they're assembling robotic kits and working on computers. A CAD drafting station. Students can draw both by hand and by computers. Science lecture lab combination. And again, auditoria at the high school level now. Larger spaces, a bit more sophisticated, a bit more elegant, and more sophisticated acoustical systems and acoustical tuning. Also, the high school program has a theater classroom. It may look something like this. In essence, a black box theater that can be used for its own performance, can be used for rehearsal space, backing up the main stage. Those are some of the images I wanted to share with you. We're very happy to have this opportunity, and again, we want you to keep an open mind that none of these images are literally what we're proposing for Milton, nor are any of the renderings literally what we're proposing for the schools at this time. There'll be much design development coming. Thank you very much.
Could we leave that spotlight off again, because very shortly I'm going to be talking about other things up here. In any event, thank you, Carl. Appreciate that, and I think it's helpful to see what can be done. I think one of the things that I saw this slideshow for the first time Thursday night, and one of the things that I particularly seized upon, I guess would be a way to put it, was the use of color and light to make attractive spaces, which are, still not unduly luxurious. They're good, hard, durable materials, and yet they're very attractive spaces. Well, in any event, Tony explained some of the problems, and I have to say that it's the feeling of our committee that there are real and significant space and facilities needs at each educational level in the town. Before going through the preliminary plans, I'll just briefly, and I'll try to keep it brief, note some of the parameters that were considered during the planning. I guess I should also state at the outset that, as this process began 18 months or so ago, there was a lot of skepticism on our committee, but at least among some of us, myself included. But when we actually visited the schools and saw the conditions and understood better what was involved, we came to the unanimous conclusion that something drastic needs to be done. In any event, a number of the parameters that were considered were, first of all, school committee requests and specifications. Bear in mind that the Department of Education looks to the school committee to define the educational program that will go on in the schools, and the building committee basically is designing to those specifications and to the standards of the Department of Education. Among the school committee requests or standards were that they wanted to continue the present grade structure, K-5, 6-8, 9-12, and they basically wish to continue the existing educational program at the schools. There was consideration of class sizes, and the school department would like to have average class sizes at the elementary level of 21 and 22 for core subjects at the middle and high school levels. At those levels, the system could easily take on another 10 or 15% beyond what we're projecting for 8 or 9 years from now, and still have classes averaging at or below 25, which is probably the maximum you'd want to get to. Major considerations were provision of adequate and appropriate space for special education, and I think you've seen some of the conditions that this special education space is terribly shortchanged. Space is actually quite abominable. Because of the burgeoning school population, it's been mentioned that music and art rooms have been essentially eliminated at the elementary level, and the school committee would like to see dedicated rooms for these purposes because it just basically makes educational sense if you have a place where you're always set up for this rather than having to lug things around on a cart. With the time involved in doing that, setting up and taking down, you actually lose quite a bit of instructional time. I might also note that the teachers for those programs already exist in the schools. They just don't have places that are suitable. At the middle and high school levels, there is a need to reduce the 90% utilization rates in these buildings to more reasonable levels because of the scheduling difficulties you get when you have that high utilization rate. It's impossible to properly schedule things with a 90% utilization. At the middle school, particularly library space, adequate science rooms, and ancillary facilities are needed, and at the high school, particular needs. And by the way, I have a letter, for example, from the high school principal with 120 or 30 listed issues, but some of the more significant ones are the need for language labs, additional science rooms because of the additional demand for science. The science addition puts 6 science rooms, 6 new state-of-the-art science rooms on this building, but they already have run out of space. They have to schedule some of the science classes in the older rooms now because of the demand for science. And various other ancillary spaces that Tony mentioned. The school building assistance regulations mandate that if you're going to have a reimbursable project, your rooms have to meet certain standards, and elementary rooms, for example, the standard is 900 to 1,000 square feet compared to some of the smaller spaces we have in this town at the present time at Tucker of 580 square feet or thereabouts. Site sizes are another issue, and I'm not going to detail it because I just think it's probably unnecessary. We did look at other spaces, look for other land in town where schools that would be suitable for school sites. The town farm was the only one that we were able to identify that was both suitable and available. We did look at Hillside Street property that's owned by the town. We found that it has a water table. First of all, a lot of it's been devoted to conservation lands at this point in time. And secondly, the remainder of it has a very high water table, when a test pit was dug there, as reported by the Conservation Committee in the late 1970s, they struck water when they went down 2 feet. So it's not very suitable for supporting a public building. We also looked at Aquinas College when we heard that Aquinas was closing, but there were a number of problems there. It's a small site, 6 acres, compared to a 12 to 15 acre site that would be meet state standards for an elementary school. It would require some significant investment, and most importantly, its availability was, and to my knowledge still is, uncertain. Another major consideration in planning was where to locate children as construction progresses. I don't know how many of you recall the Tucker renovation that went on in the mid-1970s, but I recall that Tucker students had to be removed from that building for a period of time, and as I recall, they went to school at the Temple facilities in nearby. But the placement of students you don't really want them in a building that's under renovation or construction if you can avoid it. So in any event, in light of all these considerations, and in light of the study of the existing conditions, DRA presented to us a number of scenarios that are outlined at pages 23 and 4 of the warrant. We also looked at variations of these scenarios before we settled on the master plan on which the preliminary plans presented tonight are based. The scenarios and the various alternatives are shown in greater detail in DRA's facilities study report, which was distributed last September to the school committee, selectmen, warrant committee, and was also placed in the public library and the various public schools. The master plan, which was adopted and which I explained at the last town meeting, is essentially what you see up there on the board, which calls for a new elementary school at the town farm site, the demolition and replacement of Collycott, renovation and addition at Cunningham, renovation and addition at Glover. When these projects are completed, each of the schools would, except the town farm, would house 500 elementary students, and the town farm 620. The projects are expected to take 18 months each, and assuming a construction start at the town farm in 2001 would take place over 6 to 7 years. So, you know, it's not like we're going to build 4 new schools or renovate 4 schools all simultaneously. It's a sequential program that takes place over a period of years. One of the advantages of the particular plan is that in addition to meeting space needs when it's completed, the town farm school would function as swing space for each of the other schools as they in turn are rebuilt or renovated, as the case may be. Thus, when the town farm school is completed, students at Collycott would be moved to the town farm until the Collycott school is rebuilt. When that's done, they would move back. Then the Cunningham students would go to the town farm, and so forth with Glover. As a result, no elementary students would be located in a building under construction or renovation. As noted by Tony, when the elementary schools are completed, Tucker would no longer function as an elementary school, and you've heard the incident with Jim Anderson where he wouldn't get out of the school. The fact of the matter is that the site is just too small in a town like Milton, in a city with very little space, the SBA might consider an undersized site. Even 1.7 acres may be a bit small, but they would. In a town like Milton, they're just not going to do it. And so, given that, the cost to renovate Tucker to modern standards, which, by the way, would involve enlarging rooms tremendously because they're all half the normal size, or almost half, would cost about $5 million, which about equals the town's share of the cost of the proposed town farm school. The renovation of Tucker would reduce the number of rooms and its capacity to about 300 students compared to the town farm, which would house 620 students. Thus, in our view, it seems the only economical alternative is to seek an alternate use of Tucker when these projects are done, and the selectmen recently have established a committee to evaluate the possible uses. The master plan has been translated to preliminary plans before us tonight after receiving input from educators, school committee, abutters, other boards and committees. I guess I'd like to turn now to the town farm site as the first of the items to be considered. The town farm site, as shown on this map, comprises a total of about 34 acres, roughly, that I'm outlining with the light. You can barely make it out in this scale drawing, but there's a line drawn across the plan here, and that is the dividing line between the property we're proposing to use on the lower part of the land and the 10 acres that would remain at the top of the hill off of Governor Stoughton Lane. The access to the town farm site is off of Unquity Road, down somewhat from the skating rink, which is be up in this area. And the access would be in a roadway that would be built up. Bear in mind, this is a fairly steep slope, but in any event, would be built on a roadway that would be constructed up between two wetland areas, one on either side conveniently. And the road would circle around. And one of the features of modern school construction is to separate automobile traffic from bus traffic. And in this instance, the school buses would go up behind the school and drop students off in the back, and there'd be a loop where they could go out again. And parents driving children to school would take the driveway, the first driveway, and come in, circle around, and drop students on a sidewalk outside the door there. The site includes parking in front and in back. There's a paved play area back here that could also function as overflow parking when necessary. And then there'd be a large green area which function as a field, which we hope will have some utility with the park department as well as the school department. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on the details of the floor plans of these various schools except in a couple of instances, but you're flipping a little fast over there. Can you go back just a bit, Jeff? Okay, so just quickly, at the town farm, the school is built at an angle here, and that has largely to do with the terrain. The hill sort of requires that the building turn, and the entry on the first floor for parent drop-off is down here, kindergarten, first grade at that level, gym. Second level is where the buses come in on the back, more classrooms, library, cafeteria, and kitchen. And on the third floor is just more classrooms on the left. Next is the Collycott. Oh, well, we got the rendition too. I forgot about that. The renditions, as Carl mentioned to you, are not intended to give you the final design or plan, if you will, but rather they give you a feel for the size of the building and how it fits on the land, and that's basically it. Whether we want all these peaks is yet to be decided. And back up here is the field area and the paved play area. Turning to Collycott, Cunningham, this was is a difficult site in a way because it's small for two schools of this size, and the only reason the state will consider this kind of a property is because you have Cunningham Park across the street, and they take into consideration when they're considering available land. In any event, Collycott would be rebuilt basically on its existing footprint. Cunningham would be renovated over here, and in the middle between the two schools would be a connector, which we'll see in a moment. Just a couple of features, as I pointed out, they separate bus and car traffic. The bus loop would remain more or less where it is today, I think, out front of the building in a separate loop. But there'd be separate drive entrances for parent drop-off for Collycott on the one side of this complex, and for Cunningham on the other side, where the drop-off would be in the rear and the cars circle around and go out. There's a small green area here and paved areas, play areas for kindergarten playground equipment over here also. And one of the concerns of neighbors here was McKinnon Avenue is presently an access for the parking at the rear of these schools, and under these plans that would be dead-ended, and McKinnon would no longer serve as an entry into the school site. In any event, maybe we can go to the floor plans. I'm just going to take a moment on this because of the connector. I mean, on the left is Cunningham, the renovation addition. But bear in mind that Cunningham is at one level and Collycott is on a hill. So at the first floor level that we see here, we don't see Collycott School as such, would be in this location over here. But in any event, the Cunningham School is here, and the connector at this level has an entry on the right for to a stairway and elevator, which would go up a floor to Collycott, and a separate lobby entrance over on the other side for Cunningham. The connector would house the cafeteria, kitchen, and stage. This would be a divided, divisible room so that you could have separate cafeterias for each school with separate ways in for each school into their cafeteria areas. And then music rooms would be provided in this area, and this location is ideal for them because they have immediate access to the stage when that's used as an auditorium. The gym would serve both schools. The connector at the next level, and by the way, at this level now we see the first floor of Collycott, and here's the stairway up from below. At this level, again, you've got the renovation of Cunningham on the left, and the connector again includes the library and art rooms and some special education facilities, which serve both schools, and those are the shared facilities. Other than that, each school has its own administration area and would function totally separately. They'd function totally separately. In construction, when the Collycott is built, the connector portion would also be built. It would, and that would, it's the second stage of this particular program, which do the renovation of Cunningham. And just flip, I won't really describe the third floor, but just the third floor levels at both schools. And then the fourth floor of Cunningham probably will wind up as being the central office space for the school system. And this is a rendition of Cunningham pretty much as you see it today, with some new construction on the left and the new Collycott on the right, which, if you'll notice, this end piece, at least in this artist concept, replicates the ends of the Cunningham School for coherency. Finally, at the elementary level, Glover School, this is existing building, the old part of the building, and you'll notice how close it is to Pine Tree Brook. Actually, today this is located in an area where you probably could not build today because it's too close to Pine Tree Brook. The school property includes some rather unusable space that I'm pointing to here. In any event, the school would be rebuilt with around a courtyard with some new space and a large green space on the back. There'd be additional parking on the back to separate the buses would, in this case, remain out where they are today. Parent drop-off would be across the bridge in this area of the school. The bridge, incidentally, will need to be widened to accommodate two-way traffic. But it appears, subject to structural analysis, that the bridge abutments are wide enough and strong enough to support additional decking. So we're hopeful on that one. This just shows the floor plan, which I won't go into any detail on. As again, going around the courtyard, library on the inside, gym on the end. The gym, incidentally, the SBA will not accept the kind of combination that we have today with the gym, auditorium, and cafeteria combined in the same facility. And then this is a rendition of the Glover with the new section in the back. This part in front is what you pretty much see today. Okay, turning to the secondary schools, unlike the elementary schools, which are a series of separate projects that go on over a period of 6 or 7 years, the secondary school projects are phased and they're integrally linked together. You can't, with the program that we have here, do one without the other. This shows the original site plan that we had worked on at the Pierce site. And the existing Pierce School is roughly in the area where I'm shining the light now. The problem, we had a number of problems with this site to accommodate various interests. Number one, as originally we were thinking the building might be closer to the property line, but that really impinges on the neighbors on Gulliver Street. A second problem that the neighbors have at the moment is the Channing Way, which presently runs in this area, is a shortcut and used by some people at apparently relatively high speed. And a third issue here was to have adequate parking in the site so that we don't impact the neighborhoods with parked cars all over the streets. So we moved the school as far as we could over, bearing in mind that we have an existing Pierce school here, and we can only build adjacent the Pierce. We have to keep the Pierce open until the other side of this project at the existing high school is at the same stage this one will be. So phase one of this project would construct most of the new high school in the three parts that I'm pointing to. The part that's I'm pointing to now includes the auditorium, gymnasium, etc. The broken line that you see up there represents where a field house would go if one is built under Article 5. Now the fields, the existing football field and track are located opposite side of Gile Road. There's a plan, Article 38 committee, to put in a soccer field and a half-size practice field in this area, although it may be desirable to do other things. Otherwise, the fields as shown are untouched. Now, I'll just say a word about that. The high school being built here will take up a junior varsity and practice football field. And so we've been talking, as Susan Kiernan mentioned earlier, about the possibility of moving that football field. One possibility, which we discussed with the park department, we're still hopefully going to discuss further, would be to put the football field in the area where the tennis and basketball courts are today, in which case the tennis courts roughly could go over in this area. That half-size practice field might actually be placeable down at the bottom. And the tennis courts could, in that instance, wind up over here. Well, in any event, that's a work in progress, and I guess I'd like to just simply say that while there are issues, I think they can be worked out. There's nothing really final about these plans until the final plans are submitted to the state. And so as final design goes forward, I'm hopeful that we can work together to come to some solution. I think another issue that the neighbors had particularly was a concern about water runoff from the site, because certainly there'd be a lot more pavement and hard surface up here. State building codes require that you not cause more water runoff on a site than already exists. And so the expectation is that there would be water detention facilities located possibly on some of the lower areas, either as surface collection areas or as in underground galleries, yet to be determined depending on soil conditions and other factors. But it's our belief that in fact the water issues will be diminished and improved with the control that this will provide where there is no control today. I guess I'll turn then to, well, I guess we just run quickly through the floor plans. Oh yes, this first one particularly. This is the first floor of the proposed high school, and this area that I'm pointing to now would be the second phase of the program. So this first part over here would be built over about a 2-year period. And then when it's occupied, the classrooms, administration and whatnot, cafeteria, when it is occupied, then the remainder, in this case a field house is shown, but it could be a gym, band, chorus, drama, auditorium, and a few classrooms on that side would be completed over a course of about 1 year. I just wanted to point out the field house, which is shown in this plan, and which will be the subject of Article 5. This field house, if built, would have a 1/11 of a mile track, and some people ask why 1/11 of a mile. Seems like an odd number, but the answer is that that's the minimum size that can be built without banked corners. And it would allow 4 basketball courts when the track is not in use to overlap, the 2 end ones overlapping the track, but would provide up to 4 basketball courts in that same facility. The second floor shown here, it's just a lot of classroom space. I won't go into it. Same thing on the third floor, less classroom space but with a library, and then the rendition give you a feel for what it would look like. And I think that takes us to this building, which would be converted to a middle school. This is the site plan for this location, and the 1909 wing of the school runs roughly in the area where I'm shining the light. The auditorium wing where we are tonight is right about here, and the science wing here. All of this is existing and would remain. And then what would happen in the first phase of this project, a new wing would be built along Central Avenue, which would house a classroom and other space for the middle school, which would run together with classroom space that's in the this existing wing. When you reach phase 2 of this program, the 1909 wing of the school would be demolished, and a library would be built in the area that I'm pointing to now, and a couple of administration spaces. Just referring to the floor plans, this is the lower level. You can see the auditorium over here, and various rooms along here. This is the new area that I'm pointing to now, and on this level you have a gym and a cafeteria, some storage space. At the second level, this is where you would ultimately have the library. In the second phase of the program, it'd be a circular stairway, I guess, hasn't really been decided. And at the upper level, you just have more classrooms. Just point out the team arrangements here. You have roughly groups of 4 classrooms that are associated and form a team, and that works very nicely in this new construction. I think that about covers that one. And then there's the rendition from Brook Road of roughly where this is the auditorium area that we're in tonight, and then this is what might appear later on up the hill. You know, it's interesting. I'll just pass a comment on the. It was mentioned earlier that there was a plan, proposal to build a high school and do other things in 1972, and we were struck when we actually pulled out the report from that town meeting, the report of the then School Building Needs Committee, at the parallels with what we're proposing here today. At that time, and this was before Home Inc. Was constructed, it was proposed to build a high school on that property. It was proposed to convert this high school to a junior high school, call that a middle school. It was proposed to convert Pierce to an all-elementary school. At that time it was functioning both as a junior high school and elementary. And it was proposed to close Tucker School. The parallels are very interesting. In any event, these are the preliminary plans on which we propose to proceed. As to the cost, these are itemized in the warrant at page 29, and the warrant committee plans to detail the financial analysis, and I'll defer to them on that topic. I think you all know that we're talking $114.7 million for the basic plan, which does not include a field house, and $119.1 million if a field house is built. The town's share of the costs would be $45.3 million in the first case and $47.1 in the latter case. And just a comment on the use of numbers, because all sorts of numbers get bandied about, but I tend to use the simple approach, and that is, you know, when I buy a house or think about it, I haven't bought one recently, but usually you talk about what the advertised cost of the house is, you know, and if it's $100,000 or $200,000 more likely, or even $3. We don't usually say, well, it's really $600,000 because over 30 years it's going to cost me that much more in interest. We talk about the base cost, and that's what the numbers I'm using, but of course interest is an additional factor. So that summarizes our views as to school needs as well as the proposed plan. And also I think Carl has provided a glimpse of what modern schools can be. There are a couple of further points I'd like to make in concluding. First, our committee was charged with planning the construction and renovation of the schools, and we were given a certain budget to accomplish that task. We fulfilled our charge with the able assistance of DRA. The alternatives we considered are mentioned in the warrant and detailed in DRA's report, which was distributed to town officials. I believe the preliminary plans are appropriate, and they are our recommendation. Second, some have said we should not do all of this work at once. I need to point out that although authorization is sought now, the proposed work is not to be done all at once, nor will bonds be issued all at once. The high school and middle school projects are intimately linked, as I explained earlier, and must be done together. Including the 2 phases, it will take about 3 years to complete these projects. At the elementary level, however, there is a sequential program which extends over about 7 years. The next point is that delay of the elementary program, as some have suggested, is in our view totally unacceptable. There are major handicap accessibility problems in all of the schools. Glover perhaps less than the others, but the others have serious issues. School libraries have been reduced in size. Computer classes are conducted in corridors. Special education facilities are abominable. We're going to add another 300 or so students to these schools over the next few years. To wait will further crowd the schools. To wait will result in higher costs due to inflation. To wait risks our reimbursement level. I note that recently Speaker Finneran indicated that no change in the reimbursement program is likely next year, and I do not doubt him. But the program requires reauthorization in a couple of years in any event. In the meantime, as mentioned earlier this evening, state officials quoted in the south section of the Boston Globe are talking about modification of the program. So while there may not be a change next year, the future is, in our view, risky. Finally, and most importantly, I'd like to say that we should not, as a community, fail to provide adequate space and appropriate furnishings and equipment for our children, their education, and indeed for our staff. We cannot say to our children, there is no space for you. I believe we are at a crossroad, a term that's been used earlier this evening, a crossroad in community life. I believe our needs are manifest. I believe we must go forward. We cannot reject the opportunity to bring our educational system into the 21st century. We must go forward. I urge that we approve the plans.
Thank you, Mr. Winchester. Now, my plan, as you probably figured out, is just to keep going on the theory that people can take a quick break. But it's already 10, and I do hope to get through the warrant committee presentation of the financial aspects, so I recognize Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Better?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Good evening. And as the moderator indicated, the warrant committee rises to discuss the finances involved in town treatment of school buildings. The warrant committee has been following this proposal for the almost 2 years that it has now been ongoing. As mentioned, the school building committee was formed by the annual town meeting in May of 1998. 22 months ago, they've undergone 56 meetings, and we, the warrant committee, have been formally deliberating this issue for some 7 months now, since last June. When the building plan proposed tonight first began to coalesce, we were scheduled to deliberate over the summer and the early fall, and then to make our recommendation to a November town meeting. We were anticipating a town meeting in early November. We realized fairly quickly over the summer that we could not make a thorough analysis of this large and complex issue in that time frame, and asked the Board of Selectmen in the early fall to delay this town meeting until after the new year. In doing so, we acknowledge that we've increased the challenge faced by the school building committee and their architect should this article gain the approval of this town meeting and the voters of the community on February 8th, because they will be required to develop final plans for submission to the state by June 1st in an accelerated schedule. But we're confident that they can complete that process and make their submission as required. And we feel that the result of this delay has been a more thorough process. When we undertook the analysis of this question, we basically tried to attempt 3 different approaches. The first was to satisfy ourselves that the need existed, and that frankly was a rather rapid process. There was very little discussion other than looking at the facts. I think that, in fact, speaking to hundreds of members of this community over the course of the last 7 months, I have heard very little debate about the need. There's been some conversation, but very little dispute about the fact that there exists in our school system a significant need to upgrade the building spaces. Once we established that, we went on to evaluate the plan, which was submitted in chunks but finalized about 3 or 4 months ago after the school building committee took a formal vote, and we had an entire plan that we could then begin to consider in its entirety. Note that I said that we evaluated the plan. It was not our intention, and we decided this very early in our process, to rewrite the plan or to modify the plan or to even make suggested changes to the plan. It was in our interest to decide that we wanted to move the addition to the Glover School 50 feet to the west or add another special education space to the second floor of the Collycott. We are, after all, talking about a plan that was formulated by a duly authorized committee of the town of Milton, people who had put in a lot of hard work and thorough analysis, and we were satisfied to treat their plan as it came to us as one that was well developed. But our evaluation of the plan rather centered on trying to assess the value of the school building plan to the taxpayers of the community. And we wanted to focus and analyze the financial consequences of implementing this plan. That's where we started. What we quickly came to understand, however, is that the simple question that we thought we were contemplating, whether or not to build new school buildings for the town, had evolved very quickly, because in looking at the need and in looking at the current state of the building, it very quickly became apparent to us that what we were talking about wasn't whether or not to spend money on new school buildings, but to how to spend money on new school buildings. I attended the Building Needs Conference, which was a formal state process which took place in the superintendent's office, where Mr. Neely from the Board of Selectmen and Mrs. Kiernan from the school committee and the superintendent and the chairman of the building committee, Mr. Winchester, had to formally present the needs of the Milton Public Schools to the state to get an agreement that these were reimbursable projects, something that was ultimately awarded. I too remember, like Dr. O'Neill, Jim Anderson, a gentleman who had spent some 20 years looking at school buildings across the Commonwealth, characterizing our buildings as an abomination. And that was a rather startling thought to me, because Mr. Anderson was talking about a visual analysis and an assessment of an observation of conditions in these buildings. But it occurred to the warrant committee that that word could also be used to describe a financial condition. And indeed, I think we can fairly describe our school buildings as a financial abomination. We need to recognize that these buildings represent a significant liability to the community. We have 6 large school buildings that are in fairly decrepit shape. They all contain large-scale mechanical systems, such as roofs, boilers, windows, ventilators, steam traps, all of which require large-scale maintenance and occasional replacement. What we wanted to do was focus on the value of the school building plan to the taxpayers, and that involved a contrast. On one hand, looking at what was being offered as a plan to go forward to either create new or significantly renovate our school buildings, or on the other hand, to try to measure the cost of doing nothing. There will be a vote here in the next couple of nights, and if approved by a 2/3 majority of this body, an election will be held in February, on February 8th. We will wake up on the morning of February 9th, and one of two things will have occurred. Either the town will have accepted this plan and agreed to go forward, or we will be faced with having to decide what to do with the buildings that we own. What we wanted to do was take the same time frame. If this plan is accepted, we will bond it over the next 25 years. And what we wanted to do was take those 25 years and try to analyze what the cost of owning and maintaining the decrepit buildings that we own might be. Obviously, the difference between the two would then become the object of discussion and debate as to the value of one course or another. The plan that's being presented this evening certainly has a cost. It's a very expensive plan to meet a very large need. We've set forth the costs of this new building project in Table 3 of the warrant. I'm sorry, Table 4 on page 71. And while it's death to speak to a warrant, especially to a spreadsheet, especially at this late hour, I'd like to walk you through it quickly so that we all understand what the contemplated costs are here. We have, as mentioned by earlier speakers, a total project cost of $114.7 million, 115 rounded up. The total cost of that project, principal and interest, is $188 million, of which the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will reimburse us on the order of $114 million, leaving the town of Milton an obligation of $74 million, principal and interest. Another way of looking at that might be that if you have a $114 million project and the state is paying $113.7 or almost another $114 million, what in effect is happening is that the Commonwealth is building these buildings and we are paying the interest on the cost of financing that building. That's the order of magnitude. What is the impact on the taxpayers of the town of Milton was the next question that we posed. And again, staying with Table 4 in the debt service analysis, the last column on the right is entitled Impact on the Median House, and that shows for the 25-year debt service schedule what the annual additional taxes in a debt exclusion override would cost the median homeowner in the town of Milton. Milton recently underwent a revaluation by our Board of Assessors. It was recently certified by the DOR just last month, as a matter of fact. And the median home in Milton is now valued at $261,000. 50% of the houses in town are worth more, 50% less. And the impact on the median house, or the owner of the $261,000 home, over a total of 25 years is $8,228. That's the total obligation for that taxpayer. Now let me try to set this in context. Turn one page back to Table 3. Table 3 is an enumeration of what we have come to refer to as the cost of doing nothing. Because on February 9th, this town may have chosen to pass on the school building plan and will now be dealing with the 6 buildings we own. What's the cost of doing that? Well, as I mentioned, there are some large-scale systems in these buildings, and if you look down the basic systems, they're listed there. All the things you saw here this evening in the slides, roofs, boilers, ventilators, temperature controls, lighting, electrical, plumbing, all the masonry, both exterior and interior, chimneys, floors, the very important life safety systems, gyms, gym equipment, and landscaping. The total cost without interest that we project it will cost to maintain these school buildings over the next 25 years is $30 million. The Warrant Committee had a handout at the back of the hall this evening, and I hope you all got it. It's a single sheet, landscape. It's got 3 summary spreadsheets going from left to right. And this was rather neatly done by the town accountant to offer a contrast among some of the things that have been discussed in terms of getting at and improving our school building space. Almost everybody have it, I hope. On the far left, we have the spreadsheet that we just looked at in Table 4 in the warrant. That's an $8,228 cost to the median homeowner on net debt service of $75 million. Cost of the town, $74.3 million. The middle table is something that we asked DRA to do for us, because one of the options that we wanted to look at least to set a perspective, was the cost of renovating our school buildings. We don't have to build new. What if we just wanted to renovate those buildings? The project cost there is $41,288,000. Net debt service on the bottom line, $65 million. And the impact on the median home is $7,211. Fairly close to the $8,228 that homeowner would pay for 6 new school buildings. Why is it fairly close despite the difference in the principal? And that is because this would largely be, because it's straight renovation, a Category 3 project at the state level. Those projects are theoretically subject to reimbursement. You can apply for it. But those types of projects have not been funded at the state level for the past 10 years because the state is instead aggressively funding new building construction. And so while we should acknowledge that the possibility exists that we could make an application and a miracle could occur, and we might see reimbursement on that, it is unlikely. The third table on the far right is the spreadsheet that we just looked at in Table 3, and that's the cost of maintenance. And what we've done here is taken the $30 million project cost shown in the spreadsheet and applied interest to it so that now the net debt service on that activity comes out to $45 million, and the impact on the median homeowner is $5,022. So those are your contrasts among three various options, 3 degrees of addressing these school buildings. Do nothing, and if you want to just maintain these buildings, then that median homeowner pays $5,000. Choose a very low-level attention to these buildings in a straight renovation project, and that median homeowner pays $7,200. Do a $115 million school building project, 6 essentially new and or renovated buildings with the state paying 61% of the total cost, it's $8,200. In looking at the finances, we had 3 overarching large questions, and we heard them everywhere we went, not just in our own meetings, but out in the community as well. The first question that we were asked constantly is, can the town afford to do this project? Which is a very fundamental and very important question that we really took to be 2 questions. If you split that question in half, the first half of it is, can Milton afford to do this project as a community, as a municipality, as a financial entity? And the second half of the question then becomes, can individual homeowners afford this project? Like Dr. Grasso O'Neill, who mentioned this earlier, I don't think that we could presume to answer the second half of that question. We all have very individual situations. Our homes have different valuations. We are at different stages in our life. We all have different incomes. And that's something that we cannot simply quantify. And it's something that we are going to pass on to this town meeting in the next couple of nights. And if this town meeting so chooses, it will then pass on to the voters to allow that decision to be made by individuals, by the individuals who would then be taxed to pay for it. But to get to the first half of the question, Table 2 in the warrant, which is on page 67, is an analysis of the general debt limit capacity of the town of Milton, showing the proposed school project modeled. Now, the general debt limit of any municipality in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is 5% of the equalized valuation of the town. So all of the value of the property in town added up and then equalized, 5% of that is the debt limit to which the Department of Revenue will allow your municipality to borrow. The magnitude of this project is such that Milton would be required to take advantage of a program on the state level called double debt limit. And when we first started to talk about this, we had some, this was sort of an intimidating process. We heard phrases like double debt limit. And in order to apply for double debt limit, you have to get the approval of what the state calls the Emergency Finance Board. So we wanted to take a look at that because this is a very serious issue, perhaps the most serious concern that the Warrant Committee had. We want to be very careful going forward that we don't try to bite off more than we as a municipality can afford to pay. If you look at Table 2, I think the most important consideration is if you walk across the school building, let's see, the general debt limit capacity is line 8. And if you go across the years from 7/1/99 to 7/1/2004, you see that on 7/1/99, and again, this assumes the success of a school building proposal, the town would have a debt limit capacity, the ability to borrow, up to $79 million. In the next year, it would have a negative ability to borrow under the general debt limit. But in the meantime, the town would presumably have applied for and been granted something that we understand is a relatively common and easy process. I've spoken to Jim Johnson, who is the Chief of Accounts of the Division of Local Services at the Department of Revenue, and he echoed something that Jim Anderson reported to us back at the Building Needs Conference, in that this is done all the time. Municipalities largely, as in our case, to fund large-scale school building projects. In 1999, 12 different entities, one of them a sewer district and 11 of them municipalities, applied for double debt and were granted double debt limit, all of them with the obvious exception of the sewer district, to build new schools. And that list includes towns like Hopkinton, Holliston, and recently Norwell, a project that many people in Milton are familiar with because it's fairly close to us. So that under the double debt limit, if it were granted, jump down a line to line 9 in the column 7/1/2000, Milton would, and this is the worst year of debt service, having been granted double debt limit, still have the capacity to finance or bond $95 million worth of needs, which we all know would cover anything that would be foreseeable going down the road. And that we would be in, let me take you back up to line 8 again, work from left to right. We would be in a negative general debt limit for 4 years. 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. And then very dramatically, staying on line 8, in 2004, jumping back up to $116 million capacity under the general debt limit. What happened to take us from a negative $3 million in 7/1/2003 to a positive $116 million on 7/1/2004 is that the state reimbursement kicked in. And part of the process of applying for double debt limit is that the DOR understands that you have a commitment from school building assistance and you've been placed on a priority list, and that the state has made a commitment to fund your projects in the coming years. So that acts as a surety, if you will, to allow the Department of Revenue the confidence that it needs to grant you, or the Emergency Finance Board in this instance, the confidence to grant you a double debt limit. So as a community, we're confident that should we decide to do this, we can. The expense of this project is, as I said, considerable. The second question that we asked is, why do it all? And we've heard that question asked everywhere, and again, I think a couple of the previous speakers addressed that. And I think the warrant committee might have been a pretty good cross-section of the town at the outset of our discussion, because I think we came in and what I heard around our table with our 14 members was, can't we do this a little more sequentially? Can't we do this a little more staggered? Can't we do it over a longer period of time? And what we quickly came to understand is that any way you looked at the finances of this project, delay involves higher cost. One model that was done at the request of Marion McKettrick was for the town accountant to model a scenario where the town would immediately build new secondary schools, a new high school and a new middle school. You heard Mr. Winchester mention that as projects, they're inextricably linked. One has to happen for the other to take place, and vice versa. But if we just built the secondary schools, which incidentally are $70 million of the $115 million total cost involved those two school buildings, so we'd still be in a major project. And we delayed the elementary schools, ignoring the condition of those buildings, and probably more importantly, or more to the point, ignoring the tremendous overcrowding in those buildings. By a mere 7 years, the additional cost to the Milton taxpayer would be $8.4 million. It would be a 20-some million dollar additional project cost, but the state would continue to pay 61% reimbursement on that, presumably. The net to the town would be a plus $8.5 million project. We have also, our answer to why do it all now is that we would risk the loss of what we now see as very favorable factors. There are essentially three factors at work in financing this school building project. The first is short-term debt. The project as proposed would be financed by the town of Milton on its own through bond anticipation notes for the first 4.5 to 5 years. We would borrow money in the short-term market at a rate projected to be around 4.5%. And we would pay interest only for the first 5 years, waiting for school building assistance to kick in year 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, at the worst case, year 5. And we understand that this is basically, these are pretty hard numbers in terms of the years. The state has a fairly good idea of which municipalities are going to apply for assistance this coming June 1st, year 2000. And they understand the order of magnitude of those projects already because they have been dealing with these communities on an ongoing basis for some months now, in some cases for some years. And so they understand the order of magnitude of what's coming at them on June 1st. And projecting that list forward, they're saying that Milton can expect to begin receiving reimbursement in about year 4 or worst case, year 5. We would fund it short term, as I mentioned, for those first 5 years. That interest paid on those short-term notes, incidentally, is also reimbursable. We would then go to the market and place a bond or bonds, depending on cash flow requirements, for the next 20 years for the rest of the building project. The rate that we're anticipating there is 5.5%. Both the short-term rate of 4.5% and the long-term rate of 5.5% are as good as they've been in many a year. The bonding environment right now is excellent, relatively speaking. The third factor is 61% reimbursement. And again, some of the earlier speakers touched on this. And I think that this really there's two eventualities that are possible here. I think we all understand that the state is being inundated with requests for new school buildings. And the critical mass of those requests, the cumulative weight of the state funding all of these programs, has the potential, if left unchecked, to take all of the state's resources. So one of two things has got to happen. Something's got to give. And that would be that either A, the state would continue to fund these projects, but at a lower rate of reimbursement. And I think that's debatable whether or not that course of action would be taken. We've heard Speaker Finner anecdotally say that the 61% rate is fairly solid. This is a state program. It is a legislative program. It is a statute. And I think that legislators, politicians who like to cut ribbons on new school buildings would be loath, perhaps, to lower the rate of reimbursement to their communities, because that's something that's hard to go home to your towns and cities and tell them we had to do it. It's not welcomed. But there's an alternative possibility that I think we need to acknowledge and bear in mind that presents a risk as well. And that is because so many communities are asking for so many millions of dollars that the state will not be able to fund these at the fairly rapid rate that they have been doing to date. School building assistance has been in existence since 1948. And it has been funding school building projects and reimbursing communities for school building projects for that entire time. They have never reneged on a commitment once made. So if you make the list, and if you get a commitment from the Commonwealth, history tells us that they will make good on what they promise. But getting there might prove to be a lot more difficult in the near future, even a year from now, than it will be this June 1st. And if the state drops or lowers its funding for these projects, the waiting list could conceivably become significantly longer than the 4 or 5 years that we are now anticipating. It could be 10 years. It could be 15 years. And given the need we've heard tonight, the Warrant Committee thinks that that is, no pun intended, an unwarranted risk. Sorry. I know it's late. Succinctly put, Bella English, who's a newspaper columnist and a resident of the town of Milton, wrote in yesterday's Globe something that I wish I had written, actually, because she summed it up nicely. She said, "This is not an inexpensive plan, but it is as inexpensive as it's ever going to be." And we think that that's a fairly fair characterization of the market out there. The third question that we were most often asked and struggled with ourselves, a question that we were never able to quantify with any precision, and I think you'll understand why, is what would be the effect of new school buildings on property values? You wake up on February 9th, and this election succeeded, and you own the median home, and you're now on the hook for $8,200. That's the negative side. What's the plus side? Well, in dollars and cents, we can't tell you, because once again, we have such individual situations in our lives, in our families, in our homes, that it's impossible to create a spreadsheet which would demonstrate the converse of the expense, and that's the financial benefit. But certainly if we understand that schools are one of the most important determinants of value in a community, and if you woke up that next morning and you were obligated to pay $8,200 over 25 years, instinctively, anecdotally, I think one would completely understand if there might be significant property value increases owning a home in a community that is now going to build 6 essentially new school buildings. Conversely, I think we need to think of property values in terms of the failure of this initiative as well. Because if it fails, there's still a cost out there. It might be $7,200 to renovate these buildings. In one of the other examples we gave you, it might be $5,200 to just maintain the buildings that we own, in another example that we gave you. But in any event, there's a cost out there because the town of Milton is obligated to open these school buildings, put their children into it, and educate those kids. And it has to maintain those buildings in a legally sound and safe way. And so the cost is there, and there's no such thing as going into a voting booth, should this pass this town meeting, and saying, I'm not interested, I'm just going to walk away. Because there's a liability out there that we as a community are going to need to face and face soon. If it fails and we're maintaining 6 buildings and they continue to deteriorate because all we're doing is trying to get at the boilers and the roofs and the windows, and we don't create any significant additional space, or we go out and create the very undesirable, in one example, additional space of modular portable classrooms, and we start building trailer parks behind these schools, I think there's an effect on property value that we need to contemplate there as well. And it's not, obviously, a positive one. Some other points that we'd make are on the field house. I think Susan Kiernan touched on that very briefly and somewhat in passing, but from a financial point of view, there's also a table in your warrant, and I forget which one it is, but I think it's 5. Let's take a look. Table 5 on page 72 and 73. And there, like the base school building plan, we run the debt service analysis, again thanks to Ed Spellman, on a $4.4 million field house. And again, taking the $261,000 median home, that homeowner over the same 25 years would be obligated for an additional, because this is an option, $310 total. And the field house came to us as sort of a, I don't want to call it an afterthought because I don't think that's fair, but it was something that wasn't part of the core plan and was added on after. A member of the school building committee initially suggested it. Again, hearing from Jim Anderson at the state, he said, you got to look at these things. If you're going to build, at least offer the option of doing this, because it is a tremendous community resource for the communities that have it. The warrant committee was unanimous in its support of Article 4, the school building plan. We were somewhat more divided on the field house. The negative here, and we need to bear this in mind, is that increased operating costs are a feature of a field house. It costs more to heat and light and operate this cavernous building, and it does have a tremendous return in terms of additional space for athletic and even recreational programs. The 11th of a mile track was mentioned, 4 multi-purpose courts, basketball, volleyball, tennis, whatever you want them to be. Nice to go up there in the morning, particularly in the winter, and walk the track before school opens. You don't have to drive to South Shore Plaza. Large-scale events can be housed and held in this kind of a facility. But I think the negative, which swayed some of our thinking, was that there are increased operating costs on the order of magnitude of $30,000 to $50,000 a year, depending on your weather. I want to remind people about the mechanism here. We've had some discussion about the school operating costs in relation to this building plan, and we can get into that, and undoubtedly will when we get to questions. I didn't know where to begin there, frankly. But the mechanism here is a debt exclusion override. And I think we all understand what that is, but just so it's said out loud, what we are considering here is approving a plan that has a cost that would then be bonded. And we would pay debt service on our 39% portion of that, actually on the whole project, but the state would be paying along with us at the rate of 61%. We would pay it for 25 years. This is a discrete, exact sum of money borrowed to fund an exact and specific project over 25 years. And when the project is completed and the debt service paid, the override obviously goes away. And in that sense, these buildings sort of stand on their own 2 feet. We're going out, if approved, to proactively raise our taxes for the amount required to fund the project over the life of the debt service. Actually, having heard myself almost say that, it should be pointed out that the debt service is for 25 years and these buildings are built for a minimum of 50 years. Another point I'd like to make is that Milton is already paying for new school buildings. They're just not in Milton. Because the state reimburses communities across the Commonwealth for their new school buildings and pays that reimbursement with your and my state taxes, among other things, income tax and such, we are building new schools in all of the communities that Mr. Franceschi showed us earlier, for example, Brockton, Quincy. I was one of the warrant committee members who saw the Middleborough Middle School. It is absolutely breathtaking, and it's in Middleborough, and that's sad. And the last feature I'd like to mention is the possibility for arbitrage. Milton is in Article 6 asking for permission for the Board of Selectmen to petition the Massachusetts legislature to create language similar to an act passed for the town of Arlington, which would allow us, within the constraints of the federal tax code, to go out and borrow money at the outset of the project in excess of the cash flow requirements of the beginning of the project. And while we were waiting for our project to begin to cost us money, before the money was in fact spent down, to invest the money borrowed at 4.5% on a short-term bond anticipation note in an instrument that would have a higher yield. And I'm sure you understand that even a half a point difference on this order of magnitude represents a significant investment and a significant return on investment. We're projecting, and there is both a graph and a table at the very back of the warrant on page 74 and 75. You can see on the graph, which graphs the annual debt service over the 25 years on the median homeowner, and you see that it looks like a mountain. And then you see the arbitrage possibility, which basically lops the top right off the mountain. And then look at the table down below, and the bottom line in the left column, the impact on the median household, is, as we demonstrated earlier, $8,228, with arbitrage income that has the potential to drop even lower to around $8,000. And so we're hoping through the passage of Article 6 to create some opportunities to save some money for the taxpayers of the community if they choose to fund this school building project. In conclusion, I guess there's nothing left to say except that the Warrant Committee unanimously urges this town meeting to approve Articles 4 and 5 as the best possible return on investment that this community can make. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. All right, adhering to the expected game plan, it would be my intention now to entertain a motion to adjourn until 7:30 tomorrow, at which time we will take up debate. It's been moved. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, 7:30 tomorrow. Thank you all for your patience.